A retired military ace went home for a blind date. On the way, he saved a female CEO who had been drugged. When the drug took effect, she threw herself at me. After it was over, she tossed me $3 million. She said coldly, "Consider it like hiring a gigolo. Forget tonight." I smiled. I put away the black card and turned to leave. Later, her company faced a crisis, and she knelt down begging me to step in. I threw the black card back at her. $3 million for a gigolo. Now, it's my turn to name the price. My name is Chu Fei, 23 years old, captain of the first squad of the Flying Dragon Special Forces. Among the country's 30 Special Forces teams, I made the Flying Dragon #1 in just 2 years. From a raw recruit accepted on special terms, I rose to be the triple champion in combat, marksmanship, and reconnaissance. Commander Wang Wei groomed me as a successor. My comrades treated me as a brother in life and death. But in the end, I still had to leave. A few days ago, my father Chu Qingshan called. He had a son late in life, nearly 60 now, and his voice trembled as he spoke. He said if I didn't go back to get married and have children, he would disown me. I had no choice. In the commander's office, Wang Wei was silent for a long time. Finally, with red-rimmed eyes, he handed me a leave order. For years. Give me 4 years to get married and have a child. During these 4 years, I'm still a member of Phylong, free to return to the team at any time, and I must come back whenever Phylong needs me. I saluted him one last time, turned around, and walked away. That night, 10 brothers took turns trying to drink me under the table, hoping to knock me out right there, but in the end, it was them who fell. I carried all 9 of them back to their bunks one by one, tucked them in, cleaned up the table, shouldered my backpack, and walked away without looking back. Behind the dark window upstairs, Wang Wei stood the whole time, watching my taillights disappear into the mountain road. Once on the highway, I floored it to 250 km/h. The Accord's engine roared into the night, the car's stereo blasting thumping DJ tracks, and I lit a cigarette. I poured all the blood and guts I'd bottled up for the past 2 years into the accelerator, no braking through sharp turns, drifting through corners, tires screeching against a cliff's edge. From a Yunnan border back to Mingjiang County in Guangxi, 500 kilometers. At this speed, I'd be home before dawn. When I hit the Tiandong section of the Guangkuan Highway, 2 cars were parked on the emergency lane, ahead an Alpha angled in front, a Porsche skewed behind, doors wide open, headlights still on. The moment I slowed down, I caught a glimpse of a man shoving a struggling woman into the back of an Alpha. Something was off. I slammed the brakes, cutting off the Alpha with my Accord, threw open the door, and charged out. The man had just shut the rear door and was about to circle back to the driver's seat when he saw me blocking the car. His eyes instantly turned vicious. "What's going on?" I stared at him. Wang Lei forced a smile, his tone deliberately relaxed. "My girlfriend's car broke down. I'm taking her home first. We'll report it to the police at daybreak." I didn't respond. My gaze swept past him to the Porsche. The door was hanging open, the headlights still on, and the left side mirror was missing. Door left open. Mirror gone. What's that about? Wang Lei's smile vanished instantly. The eyes honed and the military flared with a murderous glint, locking onto me like a venomous snake. "Get lost. Don't ask for trouble. Some things will burn you and cost you your life." I looked at him calmly. "Leave the woman behind. You get lost." His pupils contracted. Since leaving the military and following the boss's son, relying on his power and skills, no one had ever dared speak to him like that. The next second, he suddenly raised his hand, and a powerful right hook came flying towards my face with the sound of wind. I saw it clearly. The fist seemed to move in slow motion. I raised my left hand to catch his wrist, locking my fingers tight, and his fist could advance no further. At the same time, my right leg turned into a dark shadow, a whip kick landing solidly on him. Thump! He was sent flying, crashing heavily into the door of the Porsche, leaving a vicious dent on the expensive door, then sliding limply to the ground, knocked out cold. One move. I pulled open the deformed door of the Alpha. In the back seat, a greasy-haired young man sat dumbfounded, while the woman next to him was in a strange state, her body limp and her cheeks flushed an unnatural red. "Whose Porsche is this?" I asked coldly. The woman used her last bit of strength to grab my arm, her voice so weak it could fade away at any moment. "Save me, they're trying to kidnap me." The young man flinched under my gaze. A chill ran through him, cold sweat instantly breaking out. He shouted in terror, "My dad is Zhao Mingqiang, the mayor of Zhujiang City. I advise you not to meddle in my affairs." The mayor. I paused for a moment, turning to look at the woman. She nodded with difficulty, confirming it. That only steeled my resolve. I reached out and grabbed him by the collar, yanking him out of the car like a chicken and tossing him to the ground. Then I kicked him bang. He curled up on the ground, retching like a boiled shrimp. I didn't give him a chance to catch his breath. Bending down, I grabbed his hair and forced his head up, then slapped him left and right. The crisp sound echoed on the silent roadside. In less than half a minute, his pampered face had swollen into a pig's head, and he was whimpering and begging between sobs. The mayor's son? I'll beat him just the same. I hauled him up, forced him to kneel on the cold concrete, then calmly took out my phone and started recording. The red light blinked as I aimed it at his battered face. Confess every detail of what you did tonight, without missing a word. Say it all, and you can leave. Otherwise, I don't mind making you suffer a bit more. Zhao Yang, his face full of humiliation and fear, weighed the pros and cons, and then spoke indistinctly through his swollen, deformed mouth in front of the camera. I, Zhao Yang, admit that tonight on the highway, I tried to kidnap Lin Chinxue. If this video ever surfaces, it can be used as evidence. I pushed the lens closer to capture his face clearly, then turned to record the weak Lin Chinxue in the car, completing the chain of evidence. Take him in and get lost. Be careful from now on. If I ever see you doing anything illegal again, you'd better prepare your ass for jail. I turned and walked to the Porsche, carefully lifted Lin Chinxue out, and placed her in the passenger seat of my Accord. Zhao Yang got up from the ground, a venomous glare like a snake shooting from his eyes. He struggled to drag the unconscious Wang Lei into the car and fled in disgrace. I remembered the look in his eyes as he left. I knew he wouldn't let it go easily, but I couldn't be bothered to care. I wanted to turn off the Porsche's headlights, kill the engine, and lock the doors. Then I returned to the driver's seat. Just as I was about to hand the keys and handbag to Lin Chinxue, I was stunned by what I saw. Her eyes were glazed, her cheeks flushed an unnatural red. Her pink dress was somehow disheveled, the strap slipping down her arm, revealing large patches of fair skin and a hint of her full curves. Her hands uncontrollably roamed and caressed her own body as she murmured unconsciously, "Hot, so hot." I froze for a moment. Thinking she was actually hot, I quickly rolled up the car windows, turned the AC to max, and grabbed a bottle of water from the glove compartment, bringing it to her lips. "Here, drink some water. You won't feel so hot." She shoved the water bottle away, spilling it all over the seat. Then, following my extended arm, she lunged at me, pressing her burning lips tightly against mine. Her hands, radiating a startling heat, fumbled over my body and even undid my belt. In that moment, I understood completely she had been drugged and with a powerful aphrodisiac. I bit down hard on my tongue, using the pain to regain a shred of clarity, and pushed her away forcefully. "Don't do this, or even I won't be able to hold back." But she had completely lost her mind, clinging to me again like a drowning person grasping at the only driftwood. I let out a quiet sigh and stopped resisting. More than 2 hours later, the shaking of the car finally stopped. I lay on top of her, panting heavily. Actually, her consciousness had returned half an hour ago. The drug wore off quickly, and sobriety hit her all at once, yanking her back into the cold reality. Tears silently slid down from the corners of her eyes, seeping into her hair at her temples. I propped myself up and saw those 2 clear tear streaks, something piercing my heart. "I'm sorry." My voice was hoarse and low. "I didn't mean to. Will you believe me?" She didn't answer. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, then started putting on her clothes stiffly, one piece at a time. I silently dressed myself as well. The atmosphere inside the car froze like an ice cellar. After she was fully dressed, she took her designer bag from the center console, pulled out her phone, and handed it to me. Her voice was cold, devoid of any warmth. "Dial your number." I took the phone, still warm from her touch, dialed my own number, waited until my pocket vibrated, then hung up and handed it back to her. "My name is Chu Fei. If you ever run into any trouble, you can contact me. If anything unexpected happens, I'll take responsibility." She acted as if she hadn't heard him. She pulled a black card from her wallet and tossed it onto the back seat. "Forget about tonight. Just think of it as me hiring a gigolo." There's $3 million in compensation here. Before she finished speaking, she opened the car door and walked away without looking back. The night wind rushed in, scattering the lingering atmosphere of intimacy and bringing a biting chill. The trace of blood on the seat was especially striking in the dim light. She had treated me like a gigolo. I stuck my head out of the window and shouted at the Porsche that had already started to move. "Do you want me to take you home?" Lin Chinxue was inherently proud. How could she let a strange man who had just taken her home? No reply. She floored the gas and sped off. I was shut out, but I didn't leave just yet. A sense of male responsibility kept me from walking away with a clear conscience. I started my car and followed a moderate distance. The two cars maintained a tacit distance. I followed her all the way out of the Chongsua Highway exit until the red car vanished completely into the city's night lights. I barely pulled over by the roadside, lit a cigarette, the smoke swirling around to mask my weary face. After finishing the cigarette, I turned the car around and hit the highway toward Mingjiang County. 50 kilometers, normally a half-hour drive. But I couldn't care less about the speed limit, flooring the accelerator all the way. My speed shot up to 200 kilometers per hour. Flying down the road, I felt a lot of the pin-up emotions inside me released. But back in the monitoring center, the face of criminal police officer Tang Yufei turned livid with anger. She shouldn't have been sitting here, staring at a bunch of boring surveillance feeds. A few days ago, during a drug bust operation, she made a judgment error and personally arrested the undercover officer the task force had planted inside, instead letting the real drug lord escape. If it weren't for her father, the provincial police chief, she would have been suspended and under investigation by now. In the end, her superiors transferred her from the Criminal Investigation Unit to the Traffic Police Department, euphemistically calling it grassroots experience. But in reality, it was a form of punishment. Tonight, it was her turn for the night shift, watching the car on the monitor nearly blurring into a streak from speeding, and the close-up of the driver, not only speeding, but also lighting up a cigarette. To her, it was nothing short of a blatant provocation. Thinking about the humiliation she'd endured these past few days, Tang Yufei's anger instantly ignited. She wanted to personally catch this arrogant bastard and take out all her pin-up frustration on him. She immediately stood up, grabbed her police cap and car keys, and rushed out quickly. The police car roared to the toll station exit. Tang Yufei directly stopped the car sideways, blocking a lane. She left only a narrow passage for vehicles to pass and placed several reflective traffic cones on the road. She even set up several warning lights, making a big scene. Chu Fei did not know that his impulsive speeding would bring him huge trouble. If he had known, he probably would have chosen to obey traffic rules obediently. At around 3 in the morning, there were almost no vehicles at the small county's toll station. Chu Fei casually paid a few dozen yuan in toll fees, and as he drove out of the toll station, he saw the scene ahead. Tang Yufei, holding a flashing red warning light, waved it vigorously, signaling him to slow down and pull over. Stop for inspection. The car stopped, and the engine turned off. Tang Yufei walked forward. His sharp eyes swept over the body and license plate of the black Accord. At the same time, he pulled up the surveillance screenshots from earlier on his phone, carefully comparing them. Chu Fei got out of the car, looking at the mysterious female traffic officer in front of him, who kept glancing at her phone, then at his license plate. He asked impatiently, "Officer, can I go now?" Tang Yufei confirmed that this was indeed the car that had been racing at crazy speeds. Hearing his question, she walked over with a cold expression, thrusting her phone screen directly in his face. "Is this your car or not?" Chu Fei looked at the clear image of his car in a photo on her phone. He handed the phone back to her, nodding frankly, "It's my car. What's wrong?" As they stood close, Tang Yufei immediately caught the strong smell of alcohol on his breath. Her brows furrowed tightly. This smell, he must have had quite a bit to drink. Without a word, she turned around, took a breathalyzer from her patrol car, and held it out in front of Chu Fei. "Blow into this." Chu Fei looked at the breathalyzer the female officer handed him, and his face instantly darkened. He cursed his bad luck inwardly. Just got back and already running into this nonsense. Should have just crashed to the Flying Dragon Special Forces base and come back tomorrow morning. But since it had come to this, he had no choice but to tough it out. He blew a breath into the device. Tang Yufei stared intently at the breathalyzer, which let out a series of rapid beeps. The red warning light flashed wildly, and the reading on the display finally settled on a staggering number. 500. She pocketed the device, her gaze suddenly turning sharp. The next second, she lunged forward, her left hand shooting out like lightning to grab Chu Fei's wrist, while her right hand pressed down on his neck, forcefully pinning him against the hood of the car. Then she drew handcuffs from her waist. With a click, she cuffed his hands behind his back. The entire motion was fluid and seamless, filled with an undeniable force. Chu Fei never expected this female officer to act without a word. She just moved directly, though he had countless ways to break free. Even now, handcuffed, snapping these cuffs was hardly a challenge for him. But since he was in the wrong for drunk driving, he had no choice but to grit his teeth and accept his judgment. He watched as she fastened the handcuffs on him, trying to explain, "We're on the same side. Can you let me off the hook?" Tang Yufei heard this, as if it were the funniest joke in the world. She raised her hand and gave Chu Fei a light smack on the back of his head, her tone full of contempt and anger. "Who's on the same side as you? There are no scumbags like you in our police force. How could a public servant drink and drive? This is a matter of principle. Don't insult us public servants." Tang Yufei's next two sentences, every word slammed into Chu Fei's face. Burning with pain, that scorching sensation instantly extinguished the faint hope for help that had just risen in him. For such a trivial matter, if he just slapped that red credential booklet on the table, let alone being released on the spot, the other party would probably have to politely escort him out. But at this moment, Chu Fei's pride was so thin it was almost transparent. How could he use that identity, representing honor and responsibility, to excuse himself from such a disgraceful act? He couldn't afford to lose face like that. Even less could he tarnish the image of that military uniform. So he chose silence, his lips pressed tightly into a line, no longer uttering a single word in defense. Seeing him completely silent, Tang Yufei assumed that his earlier claim, "One of us," was just a desperate name-dropping trick to bluff his way out. Her delicate brows furrowed into a tight knot. Her voice was as cold as ice. "Where's your driver's license? Drunk driving is a serious offense. Your license will be suspended." Chu Fei didn't have a driver's license at all. He had joined the army at 18. He had spent far more time handling guns than steering wheels. His driving skills were all honed in mud and gunfire. He never had a chance to take the civilian driving test. He shook his head, his voice a bit hoarse. "No, I haven't had time to take it." At this, Tang Yufei was so furious she nearly blew her top. She swung her hand again and slapped him squarely on the forehead, not too hard, but not too soft. A crisp smack echoed. "How dare you drive without a license?" She gritted her teeth, each word forced out between clenched jaws. "And you even drank and drove? Who do you think you are? Do you think your dad owns the roads? No license and you still dare to speed?" The speedometer was nearly hitting 300. "Are you trying to get yourself killed? What if something happened? Did you ever think about how innocent the people you might have killed would be? Their family shattered because of you. Do you even understand that kind of pain?" Tang Yufei's accusations came like rapid-fire shots, hammering against Chu Fei's eardrums. "Right? You definitely don't understand." She answered her own question, her disdain even more apparent. "Otherwise, how could you drive without a license? Drunk and speeding? You're nothing but a complete waste of society. A moving road menace." Chu Fei couldn't lift his head under her scolding, only able to mutter quietly to himself. "But nothing happened yet, right? And you're being way too harsh. That's a personal attack." Tang Yufei's chest heaved violently. The tension from the street racing just now mixed with her current anger, making her feel like she was about to explode. But after that torrent of scolding, most of the anger in her heart had been vented. She was just about to catch her breath when she heard this brat actually talking back. Tang Yufei reached out her index finger and jabbed at Chu Fei's forehead, one poke after another. "You think you're in the right, huh? Drunk driving, do you admit it? Speeding, do you admit it?" His forehead hurt from the jabs. Chu Fei started getting a little riled up too. He stiffened his neck. "What you said. I admit it all. I've got nothing to say. But I really didn't cause an accident. How does that make me scum of society? Aren't you insulting my integrity here?" Tang Yufei had chased him out alone. Her police car was still parked on a safe shoulder a few kilometers away. She couldn't be bothered to go back for it. She shoved Chu Fei directly into the passenger seat of his Accord. and got into the driver's seat herself. She buckled her seatbelt quickly, planning to take him back to the station first. She told her colleague to come pick up the car tomorrow. As soon as the car started, the song on loop from the stereo, Mice Love Rice, began playing again. Tang Yufei's brows furrowed even tighter. This song was practically her nightmare. All over the internet, it was used as background music for videos of energetic young guys and energetic young gals from Guangxi. She shot Chu Fei a disgusted glance, reached out, and slapped the player off. "You're such a hick. What trash are you listening to? Mice Love Rice. Love my ass." Chu Fei didn't expect to get scolded just for listening to a song. But this time, he had learned his lesson. He simply closed his eyes, kept his mouth shut, and pretended to be a block of wood. He finally got it. This female cop was a powder keg ready to blow at the slightest spark. The less he said, the less scolding he'd get. Can't mess with her, so he'd just steer clear. The car fell silent again, only the engine humming softly. A few minutes later, the Accord smoothly drove into the gate of the traffic police brigade. The colleague on duty at the gate recognized Tang Yufei. She rolled down the window and greeted him, and the electric gate swung open in response. After parking, Tang Yufei escorted Chu Fei into the brightly lit office hall. She picked up a file folder from the desk, flipped open a new page, and prepared to take the statement. Name, age, gender. Chu Fei watched her profile as she lowered her head to write. Then spoke Chu Fei. 23. Gender, female. Boom, a loud crash. Tang Yufei was writing in the gender column. Hearing that female word, she jerked her head up sharply, slamming her left hand hard on the desk, shaking even the pen holder. She stared at Chu Fei fiercely, a sharp look in her eyes. Are you trying to be uncooperative? Don't think I won't make you regret it right now. Chu Fei met her fiery gaze, with a completely nonchalant expression on his face. I'm a living, breathing person sitting right in front of you, and you still ask me if I'm male or female. Are your eyes just for decoration? Do you want to take off my pants right now, so you can check whether I pee standing up or squatting down? Tang Yufei gritted her teeth so hard they creaked. She really wanted to charge over and press this reckless fool to the ground, rubbing him raw. She closed her eyes, her chest heaving several times, before forcibly suppressing that raging fury. When she opened her eyes again, her voice had returned to calm, though still ice cold. Where are you from? Home address? Chu Fei knew when to stop, aware that if he kept provoking her, he'd be the one to suffer. Mingjiang County, Xiaoji Village, number XX. Tang Yufei expressionlessly continued with a few more procedural questions, filling in the blanks on the registration form one by one, then pushing the notebook in front of him, sign and fingerprint. After completing all the procedures, Tang Yufei personally escorted Chu Fei to the detention cell. It was a cramped single room, with nothing but a bare wooden bed, and only a dusty wall-mounted fan in the corner. Not even a pillow. Tang Yufei stood at the door, recalling the guy's cocky demeanor just now, and her anger flared up again. She turned and walked to the control room at the end of the hallway, and facing the electrical panel on the wall, she precisely located the switch corresponding to Chu Fei's detention cell. With a click, she pulled the switch down without hesitation. Not only did the light go out, but the barely functional fan also stopped spinning. Inside the detention cell, Chu Fei was surveying his surroundings when the overhead light and fan suddenly went dead. The whole space instantly fell into stifling darkness. He didn't need to think twice about who did it. It was fine just a moment ago. The power goes out the moment that female cop leaves. It's hard not to suspect her. But for him, this kind of small scene isn't even an appetizer. He recalled the days of lying in ambush in the border jungle. To take down a target, he had lain motionless in a mud pit for 3 days and 2 nights. Not to mention mosquito bites. Even if a venomous snake crawled across his face, he had to stay perfectly still. This bit of darkness and heat is nothing. Tang Yufei pulled the switch and left contentedly. She still had to go back for her night shift. No time to keep playing with this. Piece of social scum. The next morning at 7:50, Tang Yufei, with dark circles under her eyes, briefly handed over the night's situation to her shift replacement. She yawned and headed to the office cafeteria, hastily wolfed down a few bites of breakfast. She returned to her dorm and took a hot shower, then collapsed onto the bed and fell into a deep sleep. At the same time, A black Audi A6 slowly drove into the traffic police detachment. Director Wang Xiao parked the car. Just as he was about to get out, the corner of his eye was caught by a Honda Accord parked in an internal parking spot next to him. The license plate on that car was from Yunnan. It was parked in a spot reserved only for internal staff. This piqued his curiosity. He casually glanced at it. At that glance, his gaze froze. Under the front windshield of that Accord, there was a pass lying quietly. The background color of the pass was dark red. On it, a lifelike dragon was embroidered with golden thread. The dragon coiled with extraordinary momentum. Below the dragon pattern, 4 gold embossed characters were printed. Permis passage. At the very bottom was something he had never seen before, yet it bore a seal of supreme authority. The highest power department in Yunnan. Having been within the system for so many years, Wang Xiao had never seen such an overbearing pass. His heart skipped a beat, and as if possessed, he pulled out his phone, took a picture of that pass, then opened WeChat, and sent it to an old comrade who served as a chief of staff in a certain military region. Less than 10 seconds after the message was sent, the other party called directly. As soon as Wang Xiao answered, he heard the urgent and grave voice of his old comrade. "Old Wang, where did you take this photo?" Wang Xiao was startled by the other's intense reaction. He answered instinctively, "Right in the parking lot of my unit. This car is parked right next to me right now. Tell me, what kind of permit is this? Got you so spooked." The chief of staff on the other end could no longer stay calm. His voice trembled slightly. This is the highest level special pass of the military region. Let me put it this way. With this pass, forget about your area. You could drive straight onto Tiananmen Square, and no one would dare stop you. With this pass, you can unconditionally enter any military restricted zone in the country. Now, do you understand why I reacted so strongly? Upon hearing the explanation from the other end of the line, the phone in Wang Xian's hand nearly slipped to the ground. His fingertips were ice cold. His knuckles were turning white from the grip. He managed to firmly catch the phone at the last moment. Without saying another word, he quickly hung up. Cold sweat had already soaked his back. His shirt clung tightly to his skin, bringing a sticky chill. He immediately sent the photo of the Accord's license plate to the internal workgroup chat. "Who recognizes this car?" The message was sent, but the group fell into dead silence. The subordinates, who normally replied instantly, now seemed to have vanished into thin air. This unusual silence made Wang Xian's heart clench tighter. His heart was pounding, the warning from the phone echoing in his mind. This car owner was definitely someone he couldn't afford to offend. What if he really was here on business? Offended by that clueless subordinate of his. The other party would only need to lift a finger, and he would probably have to take off his uniform. He couldn't wait any longer. Wang Xiao suddenly stood up, striding quickly toward the duty room at the main gate. He held his phone out to the duty officer. The screen's light illuminated the young man's somewhat bewildered face. "When did this car drive in?" The duty officer looked at the out-of-town license plate on the phone and Accord, trying hard to recall, then shook his head apologetically. "Chief, I just came on shift. I don't know when that car came in." He saw Wang Xian's livid face and cautiously suggested, "Maybe I should call Xiao Zhou, who was on duty last night, back to ask." Wang Xian grabbed onto it like a lifeline. He nodded hastily. "Hurry up. Tell him to come over immediately. This is important." The duty officer dared not delay. He immediately pulled out his phone and dialed Xiao Zhou. Simply said a word. "The director wants you. Urgent," and hung up. In less than 3 minutes, a figure came charging across the street. Xiao Zhou stumbled through the gate. His hair was still dripping. He had randomly thrown on a t-shirt, even had bathroom slippers on his feet. When he got the call, he was halfway through a shower. He came over without even rinsing off the soap. The boss's boss. That was someone who could crush you. "Director, what do you need me for?" Xiao Zhou panted heavily, asked nervously. Wang Xian was so anxious the veins on his forehead bulged. He shoved his phone screen in front of Xiao Zhou. "This car, when did it arrive? Who drove it in? Do you remember?" Xiao Zhou took the phone. He leaned in to scrutinize the photo. There weren't many vehicles coming in and out during the night shift. This Accord with out-of-town plates stood out even more. His memory was quickly jogged. "I remember now, it was Captain Tang Yufei. She drove in a little after 11 last night." He added, "There was a man in the car with her. I don't know what happened after that." The name Tang Yufei hit him like a thunderbolt, exploding in Wang Jian's mind. That notorious troublemaker had only been shuffled to his department after messing up in the criminal police team. He was really afraid this guy might stir up some huge disaster. Wang Jian no longer cared about anything else. He turned and dashed straight to Tang Yufei's office. He burst into the office, only to find another colleague sitting at Tang Yufei's desk. "Where's Captain Tang? Where did she go?" His voice was a bit shrill with urgency. The colleague who had just swapped shifts with Tang Yufei was startled by him. He quickly stood up. "She just left work." "Chief, is there something urgent you need her for?" "Left work." Wang Jian felt the world spin around him. He pulled out his phone and dialed Tang Yufei's number with trembling fingers. A monotonous tone came from the receiver. Beep, beep. It rang over and over, but no one answered. He called 5 times in a row. Every call went unanswered. He hung up in despair. Wang Jian turned to the colleague who had just taken over the shift. "Lu Hua, during your handover, did Tang Yufei mention anything?" Lu Hua looked at the chief's furious face, afraid to hide anything. He repeated Tang Yufei's exact words. "She said she arrested someone last night for drunk driving, speeding, and without a driver's license. It was apparently in accord. The car is parked in our internal parking lot." When Wang Jian heard this, upon hearing this, Wang Jian, his body wobbled, almost fell truly. What he feared most had come to pass. He grabbed Lu Hua's arm, shouted in a hoarse voice, "Where's the owner of that car? Where is he? Take me to him right now. Immediately, right now." Lu Hua, startled, shuddered, quickly grabbed the file and car keys Tang Yufei had left behind, led Wang Jian at a trot, arrived at the detention room. Through the small window in the iron door, Wang Jian saw a figure lying on the cold bench inside. Lu Hua checked against the information in his hand, quietly confirmed, "Are you Chu Fei?" Chu Fei had long heard the urgent footsteps in the corridor, but he was too lazy to open his eyes. Now, hearing someone call his name, he slowly sat up, a hint of confusion in his eyes. "You're looking for me?" Wang Jian signaled Lu Hua to fetch the key to the detention room. "You're looking for me?" Wang Jian signaled Lu Hua to get the key to the detention room. He then took out the key to the Accord. Through the iron door, he asked, "Is that Yunnan-plated Accord outside?" "Yours." "Chu Fei not that?" His voice calm. "It is." Wang Jian studied him in the dim light. With his neat, short-cropped hair, broad shoulders, and a sturdy build, even while seated, an imposing aura unique to military men radiated from him. He already had an answer in mind, but still asked to confirm. "You're from the military." Chu Fei's gaze didn't waver, yet there was an indescribable melancholy in his tone. "I've already left that place. Whether I can go back after 4 years is uncertain. I just retired last night." Hearing the word retirement, Wang Jian's tense nerves relaxed slightly, but he dared not let his guard down. Just that pass alone showed that he was up against someone of formidable background. He tried to make his voice sound gentler. Protect the country and defend the homeland. You're a good man." At that moment, Lu Hua ran back with the keys. With a click, the door to the detention room was unlocked. Chu Fei looked at the 2 people entering. With a calm expression, "Are you here to interrogate me? If you have any questions, just ask. Drunk driving, speeding, driving without a license. I admit it all." Wang Jian was just figuring out how to get this big shot out of here. Hearing this, he immediately took the opportunity to step down. "While considering that you just returned from the military and are not yet used to civilian life and regulations, we have decided after discussion to give you a verbal warning this time and not impose any punishment." He paused for a moment, then offered an even greater gesture of goodwill. "We will handle this as a special case and issue you a driver's license. We hope that in the future you will strictly obey traffic rules." This unexpected good fortune came too suddenly. Chu Fei was stunned. He had already mentally prepared himself to be detained for 3 months. He immediately stood up. A genuine smile appeared on his face. "Thank you, sir. I will strictly follow traffic rules from now on." The 3 of them walked out of that small, oppressive detention room. Wang Jian personally brought Chu Fei to the documentation hall. He gave a few special instructions to the staff. The staff took Chu Fei for his photo and entered his identity information. The entire process was smooth sailing. In less than half an hour, a brand new driver's license was handed to Chu Fei. Chu Fei held the license, which still smelled of fresh ink. Seeing Wang Jian still sitting in the hall waiting, he sincerely thanked him again. "Thank you for your help, Director Wang. From now on, I will be a law-abiding citizen." Wang Jian saw the happy expression on the other's face, and the tension that had been hanging over him the whole time finally settled. He waved his hand, forcing a smile onto his face. "Brother Chu, no need to be polite. This little favor is nothing." Wang Jian personally escorted Chu Fei to that accord. Watching the car drive out of the traffic police station gate, merge into traffic, he finally let out a long sigh of relief. He leaned against the gate post, took out his phone, and dialed his old friend, the chief of staff. The call was answered almost instantly. It almost turned into a big mess, nearly offending an important figure. Wang Jian's voice still carried the drained feeling of a narrow escape. Finally sent that deity away. The chief of staff on the other end was baffled by his cryptic words and asked curiously what happened. "What did that person go to your place for?" Leaning against the wall, Wang Jian recounted the entire sequence of events from beginning to end. He was drunk driving, speeding, and had no driver's license. "My men caught him. He said he had already been discharged from the military. So I took the initiative to let him go, and even issued him a driver's license." The chief of staff listened to the whole story, was silent for a few seconds, then his tone turned extremely serious. "You made absolutely the right call by letting him go. Someone like him could even get away with murder. Even after retiring, his influence is terrifyingly strong." The chief of staff said with emotion. "You used a driver's license in exchange for his favor. That deal was a real bargain." Wang Jian listened to his friend's words, and immediately a cold sweat broke out on his back. He had thought the other man was merely well-connected, but never expected it to be to such an extent. After his fear, a strange feeling of relief washed over him. Today he had stumbled into making friends with an extremely powerful figure. Chu Fei walked out of the traffic police station. The afternoon sun was a bit dazzling. He drove the Honda Accord straight to the largest supermarket in the county town. His family lived in a remote area. His parents were old, and had trouble getting around. A trip to town was a major event. The supermarket was bustling with noise. He pushed the shopping cart, weaving through the aisles. Rice, flour, oil, soy sauce, vinegar, tea, fresh spare ribs, pork belly with alternating layers of fat and lean, and the pig trotters his father loved. Anything on the shelves he thought his family might need, he tossed into the cart without hesitation. The phone payment alert rang out. Over 1,000 yuan had been spent just like that. Chu Fei carried shopping bags of all sizes, stuffing the cart to the brim. He walked to the parking lot, opened the car trunk, and neatly arranged each item filled with his heart until no more could fit. With a thud, he closed the trunk lid. He slid into the driver's seat, and the car merged into the traffic flow. Heading home. The drive home took a full half hour, even though he hurried all the way. When the familiar two-story house came into view at the end of the road, the sunset had dyed half the sky red. The car slowly approached. He saw the familiar jackfruit tree. Under the tree, his father Chu Qingshan's white hair stirred slightly in the wind. His mother Feng Mei sat next to him. The two chatted idly, but their gazes would unconsciously drift toward the village road. They always seemed to like sitting here. Maybe even they themselves didn't know why. Perhaps it was just a subconscious feeling that here, they might be the first to witness a miracle, to see their long-missed son suddenly appear before them. After Chu Fei joined the army, the number of times he came home could be counted on one hand. In fact, he hadn't set foot in the house for 2 full years. Chu Qingshan and Feng Mei saw the black Accord parked by the roadside. They only gave it a second glance. They thought it was just another passerby asking for directions. After all, this kind of situation they had encountered too many times. Today's hopes, as usual, were habitually suppressed. Chu Fei sat in the car, greedily gazing at the two familiar faces. Their features hadn't changed much, but his father's white hair was whiter than in his memories, and sparser too. He didn't honk, just slowly started the car, driving smoothly inside. Watching that black car start again, heading toward their own courtyard, Chu Qingshan and Feng Mei almost simultaneously stood up, both leaning slightly forward. The suppressed hope in their eyes instantly ignited, growing brighter until the car stopped steadily in the middle of the yard. The engine died, the door opened, and Chu Fei stepped out from the driver's seat, looking at his parents frozen in place. His throat tightened. "Dad, Mom, I'm back." Chu Qingshan stared fixedly at Chu Fei. The entire world seemed to have gone quiet. leaving only the image of his son standing before him. He felt this might be an illusion, a product of his overwhelming longing. He instinctively pulled a crumpled pack of cheap cigarettes from his pocket, wanting to dispel this unreal illusion with the taste of nicotine. Chu Fei walked a few steps to stand before his father. He reached out and took the pack of cigarettes from his father's trembling hand. He took out a brand new pack from his own pocket, a pack of Jinlong cigarettes that cost 50 yuan. He handed it over. Smoke mine. These taste better, only when the tactile sensation of the cigarette reached his fingertips. Did Chu Qingshan finally allow himself to believe that everything before him was not a dream? He took the cigarette, pulled one out, and placed it in his mouth. He tried to light it with a lighter, but that old-fashioned wheel lighter, in his badly shaking hand, rubbed several times without producing a spark. Chu Fei took out his own lighter. With a click, a steady flame brought it to his father's lips. Lighting the cigarette, Feng Mei watched her husband, lost in thought, her heart aching and tender. She used to long for her son's return every day, and now that he was actually back, he couldn't utter a single word. She stepped forward and took Chu Fei's hand. Xiao Fei, it's good that you're back. It's good that you're back. Your dad is probably just too happy and doesn't know what to say all of a sudden. Chu Fei knew his father was introverted, not good at expressing himself. He smiled and nodded. It's okay. Let Dad take a moment to settle down. Chu Qingshan took several deep drags of his cigarette, the harsh smoke making him cough twice. But his eyes turned slightly red. He watched his wife and son chatting beside him, and finally spoke, his voice a little hoarse. Xiao Fei, this time when you come back. Not leaving, right? Chu Fei met his father's hopeful gaze. He nodded solemnly. I'm not leaving. I've been discharged and I'm back. Chu Qingshan heard this answer. His tense shoulders instantly relaxed. The first smile in 2 years appeared on his face. Wrinkled all over, he nodded with satisfaction. Strike while the iron is hot. It's good that you're not leaving. It's good you're not leaving. I'm getting old. I might not have many years left. In these final years, I just want to see you get married and start a family. Feng Mei had the same thought. She looked at her aging husband. She chimed in, yes, exactly. Your cousin, Chu Yong, married the prettiest girl from the neighboring village last year. Now he has a wife. And he got a car too. I don't know where he earns so much money. He even drives a BMW. How about tonight? We invite your uncle's family over for dinner. Ask your cousin and his wife to come. Have him arrange a job for you. And also have your cousin's wife introduce you to a girlfriend. Chu Qingshan was referring to his eldest brother. Chu Ziangshan. Chu Jiangshan has 2 sons. The eldest son, Chu Liang, is 30 years old. He has been married for years and owns a large truck for construction sites. He has made some money and bought a house in the county town. He rarely comes back. The second son is Chu Yong. He is 24 and got married just last year. Chu Fei remembered his childhood. He always liked to follow Chu Yong around, acting like his little shadow. Wherever Chu Yong went, he would follow. In the blink of an eye, that cousin who always took him to dig up bird nests was already married and settled down. Hearing his parents' suggestion, he thought it was a good idea. That's great. I just bought a lot of groceries in town, and many other things. As he spoke, Chu Fei turned and opened the trunk of the car. It was filled with shopping bags, which surprised both Chu Qingshan and Feng Mei. The two quickly stepped forward, helping to carry the things into the kitchen together. A little past 4 in the afternoon, cooking smoke rose from the kitchen. Chu Qingshan and his son Chu Fei were busy at the stove. The home-raised chicken had been slaughtered and cleaned. The ribs and pork trotters Chu Fei bought back had also been blanched. The plain boiled chicken in the pot was giving off billowing steam. The aroma filled the air. Chu Qingshan looked at the dishes that were almost ready and instructed Chu Fei beside him. Go to your uncle's house and call them up for dinner. Go early, or else they might cook their own meal later, and that would be a waste. Chu Fei washed his hands, dried them, and walked out of the kitchen. The uncle's house was not far away, only about 300 to 400 meters away. As soon as he reached the uncle's yard, he saw his uncle Chu Jiangshan holding a water ladle, watering the vegetable patch beside him. Uncle, bring your family over to my place for dinner later. Dad has already prepared the meal at home. Our big brother and second brother home. Chu Jiangshan looked up, seeing his nephew, whom he hadn't seen in years. A wide grin immediately spread across his face. He put the water ladle in his hand down on the ground and strode briskly over to Chu Fei. He gave him a punch on the shoulder, laughing heartily. You rascal, finally decided to come back. Huh? 2 years gone, and you've toughened up quite a bit. Chu Fei stood 1 meter 75 tall. With years of army training and good meals, his physique was naturally strong and upright. He smiled and pulled out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, handing one to his uncle. I'm back. Come on, uncle. Wash your hands quickly and head to my place for a drink. Tonight, we're not stopping till we're drunk. Chu Jiangshan took the cigarette, lit it himself, and took a satisfying drag. Then he shouted loudly toward the second floor. Chu Yong, get down here. Look who's back. At this moment, Chu Yong and his wife were still sleeping soundly in bed. They had been out working last night, only getting home early this morning. By the time they lay down, it was already broad daylight. Awakened by their father's shout, Chu Yong groggily got up and opened the window. He spotted his cousin Chu Fei standing downstairs at a glance. Too excited to even put on a shirt, he just pulled on a pair of shorts and shuffled downstairs in his slippers. Xiao Fei. Chu Yong ran up to Chu Fei. Smiling, he looked him up and down, his eyes filled with the joy of reunion after a long separation. The two had spent countless hours playing wildly together as kids, though they hadn't seen each other for years. The brotherly bond between them remained as strong as ever. When did you get back? Why didn't you say something beforehand, so I could have come and pick you up? Chu Fei smiled too, pulling out a cigarette and handing it to Chu Yong. Well, I just got back. Go wash up quickly, come to my place for dinner, and bring second sister-in-law along. Oh, by the way, what's Big Brother's number? I'll call and ask if he has time to come back and hang out. Chu Fei dialed the number he got from Chu Yong. On the other end of the line came Big Brother Chu Yang's voice, slightly weary. He said he still had work tonight. He won't be coming back this time. After hanging up, an indescribable feeling stirred in Chu Fei's heart. 20 minutes later, the lights in Chu Qingshan's main hall cast a warm yellow glow over the small courtyard. Chu Qingshan's family and Chu Jiangshan's family were seated neatly around a large round table. The table was filled with home-style dishes. Steam rose from the food, and they were halfway through the meal. The atmosphere was just right, and each man had a bowl of homemade rice wine before him. It was cloudy in color, but gave off a pure aroma of rice. After a few rounds of drinks, they all opened up completely. Chu Qingshan held his wine bowl. His gaze fell on Chu Fei beside him, then turned to Chu Yong. Now that Xiao Fei is back, Xiao Yong, do you have any work you can arrange for him? Chu Qingshan paused, then glanced at Wang Li by Chu Yong's side. His words were full of anticipation. And have Xiao Li help him find match. He's not getting any younger. It's time he settled down and started a family. The Xiao Li Chu Qingshan mentioned was Chu Yong's wife, Wang Li. Wang Li was pretty, so her friends and girlfriends were probably just as good. Chu Qingshan's hopes were almost all pinned on this young couple. Chu Yong put down his chopsticks and thumped his chest confidently. Never mind that they were cousins. Just the bond of growing up together as close as brothers meant he couldn't refuse such a small favor. Uncle, don't worry. About the job, I'll take Xiao Fei to check it out tonight. If it suits you, come work with me there. As for a girlfriend, there's no rush. Chu Yong picked up his wine bowl. His eyes held the sophistication of a streetwise man. Haste makes waste. In a couple of days, I'll have Xiao Li invite all her girlfriends out for karaoke. If you take a liking to any of them, then let them handle it themselves. Chu Yong's job ultimately depended on his wife, Wang Li. Wang Li had an uncle who had considerable influence in the underworld. He specialized in the frozen goods business. Goods were secretly shipped from Vietnam to the border of Mingjiang County, then repackaged into smaller vehicles, taken for a spin through the largest cold storage in Yongzhou City, and magically transformed into legal merchandise. Finally, these frozen goods were distributed from Yongzhou to all over the country. Perhaps the beef tribe diners cook in hot pot restaurants. The chicken feet and duck webs gnawed at barbecue stalls. A large portion was routed out from this border region. The wrinkles on Chu Qingshan's face deepened with his smile. His greatest wish now was to see Chu Fei get married and have children soon. His eldest brother's 2 sons were already settled down. If he didn't hurry up on his end, he'd feel ashamed to face their ancestors in the afterlife. He raised his glass and clinked it firmly against Chu Yong's. A crisp sound rang out. With those words, I can rest easy. As for work, Xiao Fei just got out of the army. The young man's got plenty of strength. He can lend a hand when he starts. Glasses clinked back and forth across the table. Time slipped away amid lively chatter and laughter. Soon, the clock on the wall struck 10. During the meal, Chu Yong occasionally looked down at his phone, quickly handling something on WeChat. His job sounded easy, just going to the site to direct traffic and arranging a convoy to pick up the goods. But there were plenty of tricks to it. Chu Yong glanced at the time on his phone again. Feeling it was about time, he leaned in and whispered a few words to Wang Li, probably discussing that with Chu Fei's help. He didn't want her to have to stay up late and work hard at that place anymore. He stood up and said to the elders at the table, "Dad, Mom, second uncle, second aunt, take your time drinking. I'm taking Xiaoli home. Xiao Fei and I will head to work." Chu Yong, Wang Li, and Chu Fei walked out of the kitchen, crossing the small courtyard. The evening breeze carried a hint of chill, blowing away the smell of alcohol on them. Chu Yong first saw Wang Li home, then turned back. His home's lane was narrow, making it inconvenient for the BMW to enter or exit, so it was always parked on a roadside by second uncle's house. He had just pulled out the car keys, ready to press the unlock button, when beep the headlights of the nearby Honda Accord flashed, and Chu Fei had already opened the driver's door. "Second brother, take my car. If that BMW of yours gets even a scratch somewhere, fixing it will cost a few thousand." Chu Yong didn't stand on ceremony. He directly pulled open the passenger door and sat in. He looked around at the brand new interior of the car, the leather smell of the seats still lingering. Not bad, a few years in the army, and you're already driving a car. In an ordinary unit, relying on a salary of just a few thousand, it's really hard to buy a car after a few years. But the place Chu Fei served was different. His salary was several times that of an average soldier. After all, the risks he took were entirely different. With his current savings, buying a car worth several $100,000 would be more than enough. But to him, a car was ultimately just a means of transportation. There was no need to be too flashy. Choosing an Accord was just right. Chu Fei pulled 2 cigarettes from the pack in the center console, handed one to Chu Yong, and put the other in his own mouth, lighting it. Saved up some money in the army. Thinking about buying a car, it would be more convenient to go anywhere. He exhaled a puff of smoke, turned his head to look at Chu Yong. "Your BMW X5 is much more imposing. It costs hundreds of thousands. Second brother, have you struck it rich in the past 2 years?" The car started smoothly. Merging into the night, Chu Yong set up the navigation on another work phone for Chu Fei. Upon hearing this, he smiled and explained, "How could I have struck it rich? I'm just following your second sister-in-law's uncle. Scraped together a bit of money, bought it just to keep up appearances." He flicked the ash off his cigarette. Then he changed the subject. "What do you do in the military?" Chu Fei's hands on the steering wheel were steady, his eyes without the slightest fluctuation. Of course, he couldn't tell the truth. Discipline was etched into his bones. Even to his closest family, he must never reveal a single word of military secrets. He used the excuse he had long prepared to brush it off. Just an ordinary branch of service. Standing guard at the border, just drifting through each day, just coasting along. But lately, they're downsizing the military. My dad was pushing me too, so I just took the discharge and came back. Once the conversation turned to the army, Chu Yong's spirits noticeably lifted. The work he was doing now had one foot planted firmly in the gray area, skirting the edges of organized crime, claiming territory, fighting over supply lines, and occasional skirmishes were just part of the routine. Where there are people, there's a battlefield. Where there's profit, there's competition. He looked at his cousin and suddenly grew curious. "How are your fighting skills? If it came to a brawl with ordinary guys, how many could you take?" On that question, Chu Fei didn't dare to sound too confident. Countless images of training and real combat flashed through his mind. If he had a knife in his hand, and the tactical environment was right, taking down 40 or 50 untrained thugs wouldn't be hard. If it turned into a gunfight, he'd be even more in his element. Last year, those Vietnamese monkeys along the border stirred up friction. A sneak attack caused several of our men to be injured. The higher-ups were furious and directly sent them, the Flying Dragon Special Forces. That battle had them crying for their parents. They retreated repeatedly until the matter was hastily settled. These scenes flashed by in a second. Chu Fei just gave a modest smile. When it comes to ordinary people, just a few maybe. The car sped through the night. The two chatted idly, not really keeping a steady conversation. Soon, they were nearing the navigation destination. The distance wasn't short, but mainly Chu Fei drove extremely fast, no matter how the road conditions changed. His hands on the steering wheel remained steady as a rock. The speed barely slowed down at all. The smooth concrete road came to an end. The Accord began to drive onto a bumpy mountain road. The jolts came instantly. This area was the jagged border zone between Vietnam and Ningjiang County. Chu Fei brought the car to a smooth stop, got out of the car together with Chu Yong. The sight before him made Chu Fei's pupils slightly contract. This mountain hollow was actually brightly lit. On the Vietnamese side of the border opposite them, several huge refrigerated trucks were parked. The truck bodies gleamed white under the lights. On their side, row after row of 7-seat Wuling Hongwang vans were lined up, like a pack of wolves ready to hunt. The moment Chu Yong got out of the car, his whole aura changed. He was the on-site commander here. Without him present to check and verify the goods from the Vietnamese side, everyone else could only sit in their cars or squat by the roadside, staring blankly. He picked up a high-intensity flashlight, strode purposefully toward a platform. That platform had been bulldozed out of the ground on our side of the border. A raised area made with an excavator, piled high with dirt, just to facilitate unloading from the Vietnamese trucks. Chu Yong skillfully slipped through the deliberately damaged barbed wire fence. He walked up to a large truck, knocked on the cargo door with his flashlight, signaling for the other party to open the door. The moment the door swung open, an indescribable stench hit him in the face. A smell mixing blood, entrails, and the decay that comes from long-term freezing. So strong it was nauseating even in the cold night breeze. Hard to imagine these were all frozen goods. If the ice wasn't keeping them in check, who knows how foul these things would get. But Chu Yong acted as if he didn't smell a thing. Shone his flashlight inside, checked the contents roughly, verified the types and quantities of goods to be shipped tonight. After finishing all that, he turned around, waved to the waiting crowd on his side. The porters, already on standby, swarmed forward immediately, began carrying boxes of frozen goods down from the truck, then loading them into a Wuling Hongwang van. Chu Yong glanced at Chu Fei, who was still standing there dumbfounded, walked over and handed him a small ledger used for recording. "Xiao Fei, help me keep track of this. Note down how many pieces of cargo each truck is carrying, and write down their license plates clearly. Otherwise, when the goods don't match up, if anything's missing, we'll have to pay for it." The night wind at the border carried a damp, earthy smell, mingled with the diesel fumes from the truck engines, rushing into Chu Fei's nostrils. The cargo list in his hand had grown soft from the dew, the handwriting on it trembling faintly in the dim light. A jumble of emotions churned in his chest, twisting into an unshakable knot. Not long ago, he had been a soldier guarding the nation on the Yunnan border, clad in olive green. Now, standing on the same borderline, he was engaged in the business of smuggling. A strong sense of repulsion rose from the bottom of his heart, making his fingers holding the pen go stiff. Luckily, all they were smuggling were frozen goods, things meant for people to eat. If it were those life-destroying items, Chu Fei thought he would have unhesitatingly called his former comrades. He shook his head, forcing himself to focus on the task at hand, and began counting the boxes unloaded from the truck. Second brother Chu Yong had gone to another large vehicle next door. There were several truckloads of goods to move tonight. 2 or 3 trucks had to be loaded and unloaded simultaneously to meet the agreed time. Just then, after a burst of harsh static, a hurried voice came through the walkie-talkie at Chu Yong's waist. It was the lookout he had stationed at the intersection to guard against surprise inspections by Border Patrol and police. They had stationed people at every intersection, though they had already greased the wheels before shipping, and even clearly planned the routes and timing. But once past that invisible timeline, those uniformed men would show up on the dot. The news crackling over the walkie-talkie made Chu Yong's brow furrow into a deep groove. It wasn't the cops who were coming. It was rivals, Zhang Biao's men, the local gang boss. Zhang Biao was a big name around these parts, with over 400 thugs under his command, relying on sheer numbers. He had a monopoly on the frozen goods smuggling in the area. In this trade, competition among bosses was fierce, but the real channels were few. It wasn't something you could just jump into with money and men. The key was connections. On one end, you had to reach out to the Vietnamese side, and on the other, you needed the nod from Ningjiang County itself. Otherwise, How could the government's heavily funded barbed wire fences be so easily torn open? In other places, even smuggling a single person out was nearly impossible, let alone contraband goods in the hundreds or thousands of tons. Wanting to catch you is just a matter of minutes. The road they were taking was a right-of-way bought with hard cash. In less than 10 minutes, several blinding headlights cut through the night. Several vans came roaring in, aggressively blocking the only exit of the freight yard. The door slid open, and a man in a floral shirt walked in with over 30 men. He is Su Ming. Everyone, fucking disperse. Not leaving tonight, Su Ming cursed under his breath. His voice was extremely arrogant. Chu Yong's face darkened. As the person in charge here, he had to step forward, whether it was the underworld or the legitimate world. Whoever came, he had to handle it. He walked straight toward the other party. More than 20 of his underlings immediately gathered around. They all relied on Chu Yong for their livelihood. When the boss is in trouble, they can't be cowardly. Su Ming, what do you mean by that? Chu Yong's voice was icy cold. Looking to cause trouble? Su Ming stared at Chu Yong and the men behind him, a scornful sneer spreading across his face. His side outnumbered the opponent by almost double. Cause trouble? From now on, this turf belongs solely to me, Brother Biao. You lot get out of here. He pointed a finger, jabbing it in the air at Chu Yong. If not, I'll make sure this shipment of yours rots right here, never to be shipped out. Chu Yong had been around the underworld long enough not to be intimidated by a few harsh words. This freight yard was bought and paid for by the boss. Unless the boss says otherwise, he wouldn't budge an inch. If he let himself be scared off by this little show today, he'd never be able to hold his head up in this business again. Su Ming, don't think we're afraid just because you've got numbers. We're all just trying to make a living out here. If you wreck my turf tonight, aren't you afraid I'll come trash yours tomorrow? The reason Su Ming was so emboldened tonight was that his boss, Zhou Kuan, had his back. Zhou Kuan felt his own cargo volume wasn't enough and wanted to swallow up all the depots nearby. He promised Zhang Biao that as long as he could snatch the territory, he would get a 20% cut of the profits going forward. All medical expenses for any injured underlings would be covered. With such guarantees, Zhang Biao had Su Ming lead the charge, and Chu Yong, a rookie who had just been in the game for a little over a year, naturally became the first easy target to be crushed. Chu Yong, don't be ungrateful. Su Ming impatiently picked his ear. After tonight, I'm the one in charge here. I'm taking this place, no matter what. Leave now if you know what's good for you. Don't make me force you. Chu Yong sized up Su Ming in front of him, his eyes showing no sign of backing down. Who the hell do you think you are? He said coldly. Even if your boss Zhang Biao were standing here, he wouldn't dare boast like that. Su Ming was representing Zhang Biao tonight. In other words, he had come to take over the territory. In this world where the strong prey on the weak, whoever has the bigger fists makes the rules. Without further ado, he looked at Chu Yong, who stood motionless, and the dozen or so men behind him. The two groups started shoving each other. The scene instantly grew tense. The workers and drivers hired to move the goods quickly backed away. They were only there for 300 to 400 yuan a night. They weren't about to risk their lives for such a small amount. Attack! Su Ming waved his hand sharply, issuing the command. If anything happens, Brother Biao will take full responsibility. The moment he finished speaking, the tense atmosphere exploded. The underlings behind him, who had been itching for a fight, gripped the machetes and clubs they had hidden behind their backs, and charged forward like wolves and tigers. The men on Chu Yong's side were all there to work, completely unarmed, while the other side had come prepared. They were at an absolute disadvantage in both numbers and equipment. As soon as they clashed, they immediately fell into disarray. Barely half a minute into the conflict, two men fell to the ground with screams. With a dull thud, Chu Yong was dealing with an enemy in front of him when his left shoulder was suddenly struck hard by a club. Sharp pain shot through him. He let out a muffled grunt. His right hand instinctively swung a punch into the attacker's face. The man stumbled backward from the blow, and Chu Yong lunged at him. Both crashed to the ground, grappling in a tangle. Chu Fei had assumed this was just the usual standoff and cursing common on the streets. He never expected to encounter a turf war brawl on his very first day at work. Standing on the periphery, he watched helplessly as his second brother, Chu Yong, rolled on the ground, pinned down by a larger, stronger man, whose fists rained down like hailstones. Chu Fei's pupils suddenly contracted. He shoved through the crowd, blocking his way, rushed over in a few strides, and, using the momentum from his sprint, he kicked the burly man who was pressing down on his elder brother fiercely. The man was sent flying sideways by the kick. Chu Fei pulled Chu Yong up from the ground in one swift motion. "Second brother, step aside." His voice was terrifyingly calm. "Don't come in. Let me handle this." With that, he bent down and picked up a steel pipe that had fallen to the ground during the scuffle. The steel pipe felt cold and heavy in his hand. He gripped the pipe tightly and turned to face Su Ming's aggressive henchman. The thug saw an unfamiliar face suddenly burst in, brandishing a steel pipe, with powerful, swift movements before they could react. Several of them were struck by the pipe. They fainted without even a grunt. "Careful, brothers!" someone shouted in warning. The remaining men immediately noticed Chu Fei, watching him standing alone. Yet several unconscious companions lay at his feet. Their ferocity was fully unleashed. Each one raised the weapons in their hands. They surrounded Chu Fei with vicious intent, determined to cut down this meddler as quickly as possible. Two gleaming machetes whistled through the air, swinging at Chu Fei's head from both sides. Chu Fei's eyes narrowed. The muscles in his arms instantly tensed. With a twist of his wrist, he raised the steel pipe to block. Clang! Clang! Two piercing metallic clashes exploded in the night air. Sparks flew. Chu Fei didn't give them a second chance to strike. The moment he deflected the attack, he twisted his waist and pivoted his hips. His left leg became like a steel whip, sweeping out with a whoosh through the air. Thud! Thud! Dull impacts sounded in succession. The two men struck by his whip kick had countless ribs broken. His body was like a broken sack, flying backward into the grass on the right. He fell silent. The air was thick with a metallic stench of rust and sweat. Chu Yong's men were being overwhelmed by the opposition. Retreating step by step, their defense was on the verge of collapse. But with Chu Fei's intervention, the tide of battle was instantly reversed. He was like a stone thrown into a calm lake, the ripples spreading rapidly, turning the one-sided situation completely upside down. Seeing Chu Fei so ferocious, Chu Yong's men felt a surge of inexplicable fire in their chests. Their morale inexplicably soared, even started to fight back and forth with the enemy. Chu Fei's gaze swept across the chaotic scene, and his figure plunged back into the fray. His movements were without any waste, simple and efficient. Every time he swung the steel pipe, it was accompanied by a muffled grunt and a falling figure. Wherever he passed, it was a trail of devastation. The opposing side's morale sank with each passing moment, the savagery in their eyes gradually replaced by fear. Whenever they saw Chu Fei, that harbinger of doom, walking their way, they instinctively stepped back, avoiding his onslaught, because everyone understood that under that man's hands, they couldn't even last a single move. "Xiao Fei, watch out behind you." The hoarse shout came from Chu Yong at the edge of the battle circle. He was locked in a scuffle with several people, and from the corner of his eye, he saw someone circle around behind Chu Fei, ready to strike a dirty blow. His heart tightened, and he immediately yelled out a warning. Even without Chu Yong's shout, Chu Fei wouldn't have been in any danger. If he lacked even that basic awareness, then his title of Battlefield King would be too watered down, and he probably wouldn't survive 2 episodes in a drama. He didn't even turn his head. His body's perception had already locked onto the killing intent behind him. It wasn't until the cleaver in that person's hand came whistling through the air toward him that he turned around leisurely and unhurriedly. The attacker's face still wore a smug smile, as if convinced of his success. Chu Fei calmly extended his left hand, his palm precisely clamped down on the rapidly stabbing blade. The attacker watched as the tip of the cleaver was mere inches from the other's body, just 2 more centimeters forward, and it would pierce through that body. The grin on his face grew even more sinister. The muscles in his arm bulged as he used all his strength. Yet, the cleaver remained motionless, as if welded in midair. The smile on his face instantly froze. Following the hand that gripped the blade, he raised his head in disbelief, only to meet Chu Fei's eyes, which were filled with a mocking smile. The ambush failed, and his heart was instantly filled with icy fear. His only thought was to drop the knife and run. Unfortunately, he was the director of this script. Reality never plays out according to the weak's wishes. How could Chu Fei let him escape so easily? He raised the steel pipe in his right hand, aimed it at the man's crown, and brought it down cleanly and decisively. When dealing with an enemy who wants your life, any softness is cruelty to yourself. If he had fallen today, the other party wouldn't have hesitated for a second. Bang! A heavy, dull thud. Chu Fei had precise control over his strength. This blow wouldn't kill the man, just make his head bleed. Enough for a bandage at the hospital. Now, with a chopping knife in his left hand and a steel pipe in his right, he was balanced in offense and defense. Fighting became even more effortless, seeing that the other side still had about 20 men putting up a stubborn resistance. To avoid more injuries on his own side, he decided to speed up the resolution of the fight. Su Ming watched his own men fall one by one, his heart burning with anxiety. If this kept up, forget about taking over territory. Even whether he could leave in one piece tonight had become questionable. He was well aware that the root cause of all this was that sudden appearance of Chu Fei. To turn the tide of defeat, he decided to boost morale in the most direct way. Go cut him down. Su Ming shouted at the top of his lungs, his voice hoarse and desperate. Whoever can land a cut on him, I'll reward them with 10,000 yuan. 10,000 yuan, that number was like a thunderbolt, exploding over the chaotic battlefield. All the thugs' movements froze for a moment. Then, dozens of pairs of red-rimmed eyes turned in unison toward Chu Fei. In those eyes, there was no longer just fear, but more of a mad greed ignited by money. 10,000 yuan per slash these thugs out here. Even working their asses off for a month couldn't earn that much. At this moment, they even wished Chu Fei would stand still, so they could get in a few more slashes. Chu Fei looked at Su Ming, who was shouting not far away, and a cold smirk curled at the corner of his mouth. How much must he hate me to be willing to pay such a bloody price? With a flick of his wrist, the steel pipe in his right hand flew out. Bang! The high-speed spinning pipe drew a straight line through the air and smacked Su Ming right on the head with pinpoint accuracy. Su Ming didn't even have time to realize what happened, only felt his vision go dark, a warm liquid flowing down his forehead, and then his whole body went limp and collapsed. He passed out on the spot. The others saw Chu Fei throw away the steel pipe. With only one cleaver left in his left hand, his courage swelled again. The temptation of 10,000 yuan per slash made them exert every ounce of strength they had, rushing at Chu Fei like madmen, facing a group of desperados who valued money more than their lives. Not a trace of panic showed on Chu Fei's face. Several cleavers from different angles simultaneously hacked at him. He suddenly twisted his body to the left, dodging all the attacks at an inconceivable angle. At the same time, he smoothly slashed with the knife in his hand, and a spray of blood bloomed in the air. On the chests of the few men rushing at the front, there simultaneously appeared deep wounds that reached the bone. Blood instantly gushed out, staining their clothes bright red. Having succeeded in one strike, Chu Fei's movements did not pause for a moment. The cleaver in his hand seemed to come alive, and he easily parried several stabbing knives. His movements were incredibly agile. With a swift misstep, he had already flashed behind a few people and delivered a diagonal slash to their backs. Crack! Several more shrill screams followed. The remaining men saw Chu Fei's godlike demeanor. How could they still dare to resist? Forget 10,000 yuan a slash. Even if they were offered 100,000 yuan now, they wouldn't dare take another step forward. In just 2 exchanges, 7 or 8 of their own had already fallen. How could they continue this fight? There was simply no match on the same level. Finally, one thug's mental defenses completely collapsed. With a strange cry, he threw down his weapon, turned and ran. Such is human nature, with the first to lead the escape. The rest were like a startled flock of sheep, instantly triggering a chain reaction. A dozen people scrambled to flee outward, afraid that if they ran too slowly, that demon would chop them down with one swing of his blade. Chu Fei didn't give chase. He wasn't a bloodthirsty killer. Besides, he had just been discharged from the army. Seeing that the other side's men had all fled, Chu Yong finally breathed a sigh of relief. He quickly walked over to Chu Fei and punched him on the shoulder, his face filled with undisguised excitement. Not bad, kid. You kept it so well hidden just now. I asked you how many you could take, and you go and surprise me like this. Chu Fei casually tossed the bloodstained blade to the ground, a crisp clang ringing out. Just a lucky streak. His eyes swept over the groaning injured on the ground. He asked, "What about these people on the ground?" Chu Yong looked at the 20 or so of the other side's men lying on the ground and immediately resumed his leader's demeanor, giving orders to the younger guys beside him. "Send our injured brothers to the hospital. All medical expenses will be reimbursed. Those who came to help today each gets a bonus of 2,000 yuan. Load their people into the cars. Drag them to the intersection and dump them there." The uninjured underlings immediately set to work. They threw Su Ming's group into their cars like dead dogs, drove to a distant roadside and dumped them, then quickly sent their own injured brothers to the hospital. After handling all this, Chu Yong took out his phone and called Wang Li's uncle. The phone rang only a few times. Before it was picked up, "Uncle, just now Zhang Biao's men came to our yard to cause trouble. We fought them off and chased them away." On the other end was Su Guoyang, Bang Li's biological oncle, also one of the behind-the-scenes bosses of this batch of smuggled frozen goods. He was currently living in a luxury villa in Country Garden Park, Upper City, Chongswa City. He had just returned from a business dinner not long ago. In their line of work, hosting and gifting were commonplace. He was lying on the sofa, exhausted, when he heard the phone on the coffee table ring. Su Guoyang picked up the phone, seeing it was Chu Yong calling. He answered and listened to Chu Yong's report. His brows instantly furrowed. He hadn't expected them to actually dare to cause trouble. "Are you and Xiao Li injured?" His voice carried a hint of concern. Chu Yong and Wang Li were both his relatives, and also the people he had personally arranged to be there. His top priority was still their safety. Chu Yong sensed his uncle's concern and explained, "I'm fine. My cousin just retired from the military and had no job, so I told Xiao Li to rest at home and arranged for my cousin to come help out." Hearing that both Chu Yong and Wang Li were fine, Su Guoyang breathed a sigh of relief. But then he felt a surge of curiosity. He knew very well how many men Chu Yong had. How had they driven the other side away? "How did you drive away Zhang Biao's men?" "I remember Zhang Biao had quite a few men." Chu Yong gripped the phone and recounted everything that had happened tonight exactly as it occurred, especially the heroic feat of how Chu Fei single-handedly turned the tide of battle. He didn't hide a single detail. Su Guoyang held the phone. Chu Yong's excited voice still echoed from the earpiece. His fingers unconsciously tapped the desk. His gaze deep. "Your cousin, Chu Fei." Su Guoyang's voice was low, with a hint of curiosity. "One man can take down over a dozen people." This news caught him off guard. "He's really skilled. Ask him if he's interested in joining us." He immediately recognized Chu Fei's value. "If he agrees, let him work with you on this project from now on. Let Xiao Li rest at home." Chu Yong heard this and felt a weight lifted off his heart. He also didn't want Wang Li to take this risk with him. Staying up late is bad for a woman's health. He quickly replied, "I'll ask him again later. Also, I had someone send our injured to the hospital. I promised that the medical expenses are on us. Tonight, each brother who helped will be given 2,000 yuan." "That's fine," Su Guoyang said, unconcerned about the money. "As long as that batch of frozen goods is safe and sound. Everything else is a minor issue." His tone carried approval. "Xiao Yong, you did well. These are all things we should do. Tomorrow, when you give out bonuses, give 100,000 yuan to your cousin. This is our reward for him." Chu Yong hung up the phone. A look of uncontrollable joy spread across his face. He quickly walked over to Chu Fei, who was enjoying the river breeze on the dock, gave him a hearty pat on the shoulder, and said cheerfully, "The boss just said you did a great job, so he's rewarding you with 100,000 yuan. He also asked if you'd like to join us, letting you and me take charge of this project." "Xiaofei, what do you think? 100,000 yuan in this border town is almost a year's salary for ordinary people, enough to turn heads with envy." But for Chu Fei, the money held little appeal. Right now, he just wanted to set his parents' minds at ease. Finding a job was merely a facade. Chu Fei wore a calm smile and replied dismissively, "I'll give it a try for a while." Meanwhile, Su Guoyang had finished his call with Chu Yong. His finger swiped across the screen, found Zhou Kuen's number, and dialed. Everyone in the smuggling trade walked a razor's edge. The circle was just that small. They all knew each other. Rivals in the same lane were natural enemies. But coming to trash our place for no reason, that's an insult no one can swallow. A high-end apartment in Pingxiang City. Zhou Kun was fooling around with his latest lover. Over the past few years, he made his fortune smuggling frozen goods. He changed women more often than he changed clothes. His body had long been drained. Just after less than 5 minutes, the phone on the nightstand suddenly let out a piercing ring. The sudden noise startled him, making him flinch, and he gave up the fight on the spot. He cursed under his breath and reluctantly reached for the phone. Who the hell is this, calling at this hour? Su Guiyang was already fuming inside, ready to confront Zhou Kun. But before he could, he got a face full of curses from the other end. His own anger flared up now. His voice turned cold enough to form icicles. It's me, Su Guiyang. Zhou Kun, what's your game? Why did you send Zhang Biao's men to take over my dock? When Zhou Kun heard the other party introduce themselves, the anger from earlier subsided. He didn't dare to keep being aggressive. He grabbed a cigarette from the bedside table and lit it. Taking a deep drag, he finally spoke in a lazy tone. So it's President Su. What do you mean by stealing your dock? Is that place yours to claim? Besides, it's not my problem if you can't hold it. And as for what you said about Zhang Biao's men taking it, that wasn't me. If you have an issue, take it up with Zhang Biao. Su Guiyang listened to his smug tone, letting out a cold laugh. So you're saying Zhang Biao has nothing to do with you? Meaning that any conflict between me and Zhang Biao from now on has nothing to do with you, right? That was exactly what Zhou Kun wanted. Let Su Guiyang and Zhang Biao fight it out, preferably until both sides destroy each other. If Zhang Biao loses, he can promote Li Biao or Huang Biao. If Zhang Biao wins, he'll have one less strong competitor. He flicked the ash off his cigarette. He said nonchalantly, "That's right. Whoever robbed you, go find them. It's none of my business." The next day, the County People's Hospital was filled with the smell of disinfectant. Su Ming and dozens of his men were covered in injuries, lying on hospital beds, groaning in pain. Zhang Biao learned that last night's attempt to seize the dock had failed, and all his men had ended up in the hospital. With a grim face, he walked in with a few uninjured subordinates. He looked at Su Ming, who was hooked up to an 4 on the hospital bed, his head wrapped in thick gauze, with traces of blood seeping through. Suppressing his anger, Zhang Biao asked, "What happened? How'd things go?" When Su Ming saw his boss had arrived, and that he had not only failed, but had also ended up in such a mess, his face burned with shame. He wished he could find a hole to crawl into. In a hoarse voice, he said, "Brother Biao, Chu Yong somehow found some expert. None of US could defeat him. A single person took us all down. It was just one guy." Zhang Biao thought he had misheard. His sharp eyes demanded confirmation again. Only when he saw Su Ming nod in shame did he believe this wasn't a joke. A surge of rage shot straight to his head. He burst out cursing, "All of you useless pieces of trash. Dozens of you couldn't handle one man. What, does he have 3 heads and 6 arms? Or is he invulnerable to swords and guns?" Su Ming felt humiliated beyond words. Shame and anger churned within him. He knew Zhang Biao had completely lost faith in him. To save face and to get revenge, he yanked out the 4 needle from the back of his hand. Blood immediately gushed out. He stood up with a determined look and begged to fight. "Brother Biao, give me another chance. Give me 80 men. Tonight, I'll capture that brat for you. Damn it, I don't believe he's made of iron. Even if he's Iron Man, I'll overwhelm him with sheer numbers." Zhang Biao looked at Su Ming, who was completely desperate like that. The anger in his eyes subsided slightly. He needed someone to save face for him. He nodded and spoke in a deep voice. "All right then. Tonight, no matter what, we're taking the dock. And bring that kid to me as well. I want to see if he's so tough that he can fly." Around 5 in the evening, Chu Fei finally got out of bed. There was a little trouble last night, but the frozen goods still made it to Nanning smoothly. To him, this wasn't a big deal. In the living room, the aroma of food wafted through the air. Chu Qingshan hadn't seen Chu Fei and Chu Yong until after 8 in the morning, dragging their tired bodies back. Now, seeing his son wolfing down his meal, he couldn't help but ask, "How is it? Getting used to the work? Tired?" Chu Fei heard his father's question. He stopped his chopsticks midair. Looking up, he replied, "It's okay. The job second brother assigned me is just keeping records of the quantities. It's much lighter than the work in the army." That much was true. In the army, the daily high-intensity training was to keep the body in peak condition. It was far more exhausting than this little bit of work. Beside him, Feng Mei lovingly placed a large piece of braised pork in Chu Fei's bowl. "Eat more, so you'll have the strength to work tonight." At 9 o'clock in the evening, the border pier was brightly lit. Having learned his lesson from last night, Chu Yong didn't dare to be careless even for a moment. He deliberately doubled the number of men compared to last night, assigning all the loading and unloading work to his underlings. The night wind brushed past, carrying moisture. Chu Yong and Chu Fei stood side by side at the edge of the pier, their eyes vigilantly scanning the surrounding darkness, silently watching their men work. The flat concrete ground of the dock unloading area. The chatter between Chu Fei and Chu Yong was cut short by a sharp screech of tires. More than a dozen beat-up vans charged roughly into the yard, screeching to a crooked halt. The headlights glared, blinding everyone. Doors were yanked open one after another. Clattering footsteps mingled with the clang of metal, quickly filling the night sky over the dock. It was just like last night, only tonight the numbers had doubled. Su Ming, the leader, leaped out of the first van. The bandage on his head stood out starkly in the dim light. To hide his humiliation, he deliberately wore a cap, pulled low, but it did nothing to dampen his arrogant swagger. 80-odd men streamed out of the vans, each carrying a weapon. Steel pipes and machetes glinted coldly in the moonlight. They followed Su Ming and stormed towards the center of the yard. "Stop right there." Su Ming's voice was hoarse and sharp, shattering the dock's usual rhythm of work. "Anyone who moves again, don't blame me for being ruthless." The busy porters and truck drivers immediately stopped what they were doing and stepped back, their eyes filled with caution and fear. They were just ordinary people trying to make a living. This kind of gang vendetta scenario was something no one wanted to get involved in. Chu Yong looked toward the voice and immediately recognized Su Ming, who was wearing a hat. He had already anticipated this. The grudge from last night was settled. The other side would surely come for revenge. Admitting defeat was out of the question, and handing over the dock they had worked so hard to build was nothing but a fool's dream. Chu Yong's voice was steady, with a hint of mockery. "How did you get back last night? Forgotten so soon? Want to experience it again?" Su Ming was hit where it hurt. His face stiffened, but seeing the dense crowd behind him, his confidence instantly returned. The men he brought tonight were more than twice as many as last night. In his eyes, victory was within his grasp. "Su Ming Sna, is that so? I'd like to see how you'll make me go back today." A sarcastic voice came from behind him. "I didn't see it last night. So tonight, let me get a good look and see how you get me back." Chu Yong frowned slightly. He knew that if this wasn't resolved, the business at the dock would never be peaceful. Fighting and killing are ultimately the worst strategy. In this society, harmony brings wealth. He suppressed his anger and tried to resolve the issue. "Su Ming, we're all here to make money, even though we had a little conflict last night. All right, I'll pay you 100,000 in medical expenses. Let's just call this matter settled. What do you think?" Hearing this, the smugness on Su Ming's face grew even more pronounced. He thought Chu Yong was scared, that he was backing down. He sneered and shook his head. 100,000? Do you take me for a beggar? Are you trying to brush off a pauper?" Chu Yong thought the other party was dissatisfied with the amount. To get the dock back to normal operations as soon as possible, he decided to give it a bit more. "Then what do you want? How much in medical expenses? Name your price." Su Ming held up 3 fingers, waving them in front of Chu Yong. The smile on his face turned greedy and vicious. "First, you hand over this dock to me. From now on, it's ours to use. Second, hand over that kid from last night for me to deal with. Third, pay 1 million in medical expenses. Then we'll consider this matter settled." He paused, his eyes scanning the crowd with malice. "Otherwise, all of you will end up in the hospital tonight. Go to hell." After hearing these 3 conditions, Chu Yong could no longer suppress the rage in his chest. He cursed loudly. Don't even talk about 3. Not even 1 would he agree to. His face flushed crimson with anger. His eyes turned sharp and fierce. "Get lost. Do you really take us for pushovers? To be squeezed however you like? If you want to fight, we're happy to go all the way." Su Ming hadn't expected them to dare refuse, and even tell him to get lost. The smugness on his face instantly froze. Turning livid, he felt he had been greatly humiliated. "Fight them." He suddenly swung his arm, his voice hoarse and desperate. "Smash everything." At his command, the crowd behind Su Ming surged forward like a floodgate opening. Brandishing weapons, they charged. Although Chu Yong's side was also prepared, they were at an absolute disadvantage in numbers. The moment they clashed, they were immediately pressed back and beaten. Retreating step by step, screams and the clang of metal rang out in chaos. Chu Yong watched his men fall one by one, his eyes bloodshot as he grabbed a crowbar and prepared to rush in. But a hand clamped around his arm like iron pincers. "Second brother, don't go." Chu Fei's voice was calm, yet carried an unyielding authority. "Let me handle this." He stopped Chu Yong, turned, and leaped from the meter-high unloading platform, landing steadily on the ground. As he passed a cargo van, he didn't slow down, grabbing the edge of the van's door with his right hand, his arm muscles suddenly swelling. Click bang! Amid the grating, teeth-curling sound of twisting metal, he forcibly ripped the heavy iron door from the van's body. Chu Fei held the door with one hand, that massive, irregular metal plate grasped firmly in his grip. It was as if he had become an indestructible shield, a hammer that met no resistance. He charged into the crowd, swinging the car door in his hand, with a whoosh of wind, and swept it across Su Ming's men. The first thug to rush up didn't even have time to react, before being struck by the massive door panel. His whole body flew like a baseball hit by a bat, flying sideways 7 or 8 meters. And after landing, there was no sound. Wherever Chu Fei went, bodies tumbled. Every time he swung the car door, several men were sent flying by the enormous impact. The scene was brutal and efficient. Chu Yong's men saw this, and were all shocked into stopping their movements, gathering off to one side, afraid of being accidentally injured by that terrifying humanoid Gundam. The fight had only begun 5 minutes ago. Of the more than 80 men Su Ming had brought, over 30 were already lying on the ground moaning, completely lost their fighting capability. The remaining 40-plus underlings, watching that demon wielding a car door, their steps involuntarily retreated, their faces etched with terror. Su Ming stood behind the crowd, his heart pounding wildly. He knew that if they couldn't take down this monster, his fate tonight would be even worse than last night's. To boost morale, he yelled at the top of his lungs, "Go! He's just one man. What are you afraid of? Surround him. Chop him to death. Whoever takes him down will get a personal reward of 3,000 yuan. Under a heavy reward, there will always be reckless men." Those underlings, hearing about money, a glimmer of greed flickered back into their otherwise dull eyes. Following Su Ming's orders, they plucked up their courage and slowly closed in, surrounding Chu Fei in the center. The encirclement was formed, but no one dared to make the first move. The overwhelming scene from just now had already left a deep psychological shadow on them. No one wanted to be the one whose bones got crushed by the car door for sticking out. "Go on." Su Ming was jumping anxiously outside the circle, his voice cracking. "What are you afraid of? Sneak up from behind." He doesn't have eyes in the back of his head. The thugs standing behind Chu Fei nervously exchanged glances, signaling with their eyes to act together. After receiving nods of agreement from each other, they suddenly lunged forward, the machetes in their hands turning into streaks of cold light, silently stabbing toward Chu Fei's back. Chu Fei held the car door in his right hand, standing in the center of the encirclement. His expression showed no change whatsoever. As the king of soldiers among soldiers, if he couldn't even handle a few dozen street thugs, he might as well go home and raise pigs. The several cold gleams of killing intent behind him. He had long sensed them. He was not an Iron Man impervious to blades and bullets. He suddenly lunged forward. While evading the sharp edge, he swung the car door backward in his hand,